Good morning, and welcome to Writers and Readers. I'm Charlie Redner, your host, and this is the show where we interview authors from Laguna Beach to, Long Beach Island, New Jersey, and even London. And we also, on occasion, we're going to invite some of you listeners in and viewers so that we can talk about books, any kind of books you'd like to talk about. And now I get a chance for a shameless promotion. I think that's what Jimmy Fallon calls it when he has something that promotes him or something he's doing. I'm going to talk to you about something I found in the Hummingbird Review. This is the third issue, and it's our issue where we talk to the beat writers. We have interviews with them, we have works from them, interesting stories. I love it. And the reason I'm promoting this is because in the end of it, in the middle somewhere, there's a thing called How You Play the Game. Now, it could be a short story, it could be fast fiction, it could be a poem. And I loved it so much that I'll tell you how much I loved it. 10 years later, I asked our guest, Beth Black, if she would like to be a guest editor of the Hummingbird Review. We can talk about that later, but I really love this piece so much, and it's why I invited her onto the show. And I'd like to say good morning to Beth. Hi, Beth.
Good morning, Charles.
I'll give you a little synopsis of some of the things that she's done over the years. And I'm going to say that, you were a writer with the Irvine UCI, is it?
Well, that's where I went to school.
That's where you went to school for creative writing?
I majored in English with an emphasis in creative writing. I also studied literary journalism.
Oh, really?
And the two together, they take a lot of creative energy, but they also take a lot of thinking and plotting and planning to make a story come alive on the page.
And you won an opportunity to write stories which will be released at a later date. What was that? You got a grant?
Oh, gosh. While I was at UCI, this is a couple years ago. While I was at UCI, I was awarded a grant. I did write a series of speculative fiction stories about genetic engineering.
Oh, my goodness.
And they haven't been released yet. I'm considering putting them out in serialized form on one of the platforms like Patreon.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And we're also going to talk about this book, which she's written. It's called Where You Go, I Go. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what that title means?
Sure. A couple people in the audience might recognize me. I used to own what was, for 15 minutes, the most famous bike shop in the nation.
Wow.
It was an electric bike shop, Pedigo, Greater Long Beach. And I ran it for 6 years. We closed a few months before the pandemic hit, with good timing.
Yes.
And so we had electric bikes, and we had a lot of seniors coming in to use them because you twist the throttle and you can go.
Where was the bike shop? What town?
Oh, it was in Seal Beach, California.
Seal Beach.
A few miles north of here.
Know where it is, yes.
And just shy of Long Beach, though we rode into Long Beach quite a bit. So we had a tandem, and it had a throttle in the front, but it was a regular bike that you could pedal too.
Okay.
And the person who rides at the front of the tandem is always called the captain.
Oh.
And so we get a lot of couples in, and they were very romantic on this tandem at all ages. And we'd seat them both on the bike, and inevitably, the captain would turn around to the person in back, twist around and say, "Where do you want to go?" And that person would so many times say, "Where you go, I go."
Okay, naturally. Well, give us the elevator pitch. If you're going to pitch this for the movie, how would you describe the content?
This would make a great
book?
movie too. I
Yes,
think
it will.
On Netflix.
It will.
So this is part of a collection of stories. And this particular story, they all take place in a fictional town in Orange County called Rancho Alegro. And in this particular story, it's a couple that meet and fall in love while riding bikes.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to tell you one other thing about this. There's an inciting incident. That's the big thing that happens. The exciting thing that happens that brings them together.
Page 11 if you're a screenwriter.
And so I belong to this group called the Orange County Fictionaires. And there's a story behind how a group of us, a subgroup, started this.
Okay.
I was noticing that there was a lot of fiction out there that was aimed towards older audiences and had stars like Diane Keaton and Jane Fonda and Robert Redford still starring in romances. And then I noticed there were a lot of books out there, boomer fiction they called it.
Yes.
And second chance romance. So a group of us decided to get together and create this collection. It's not a series because you can read them in any order.
Right.
But it is a wonderful collection of stories, and they all take place in Rancho Alegro. And we use each other's characters and
Oh, that
settings.
sounds like fun.
And we all have this one exciting event that takes place. For each of our stories, I'm not going to say what it is, but
No.
in my case, he's the hero who protects her.
Okay.
And in some stories, it's something that it happened just before the story begins and leads into the action. So if you look at the collection, you'll discover what that is. It's kind of fun.
Well, I'd like you to read the first chapter, or at least the beginning of it, because it tells the story pretty well for what
That's
you're
it.
about to read.
So one of the other things that I learned while running the bike shop was that people with Parkinson's disease, they may have trouble walking, but they can ride a bike. A lot of them can.
Absolutely.
It's an awesome thing that they can do. So I put that into the story. And so it begins with a woman who is trapped in a place called the Rancho Royale. And it is a skilled nursing facility.
Okay.
She's only there because she is developing Parkinson's. And she lives alone. She's a widow.
Okay.
So chapter 1. Every day was bingo day at the Rancho Royale. Cautiously, Bonnie Brennan lifted her hand to smooth an errant wisp of silky gray hair from her face. She did her best to move slowly, to fade into the invisible aged population, despite her lifelong resemblance to Princess Grace of Monaco, bearing a fine bone loveliness that deepened into gentle elegance during her 68 years. Bonnie didn't like attention, and she especially didn't want it that day, because with just a little neglect from the staff, she might make good her escape. She longed to spend a few hours wandering their town, Rancho Alegro, and then, of course, she would return. This was Bonnie's third try. 3 times charmed, she told herself. Her first 2 attempts at bolting were really practice drills anyway. The facility had been designed to help aging inmates feel better about their situation. It appeared to be some pretentious aristocrat's estate. What an illusion. Bonnie didn't like her odds in this place. Surrounded by fossils and wheelchairs, the lame, the doomed, the decaying, the moribund. Stealing a moment to peek out of the ballroom's enormous picture windows, she was tantalized by the view that stretched beyond their little rose garden to the distant foothills. She remembered hiking scenic paths and breathing free. That was before the Parkinson's set in.
Wow. Now there's 3 aspects of your book, and I had to laugh, by the way, on the bingo. I did a lot of work for Subaru, and they used to hold picnics for people that owned a Subaru. And one of the things they did was play bingo. And boy, if that wasn't the most important job of the whole weekend, you had to call those numbers, you couldn't make a mistake, and it was something you really had to pay attention because they got upset if you did a missed call.
Well, it's very serious business in a lot of these places as well.
But I wanted to ask you, there's 3 major things in there. One is what you probably researched, since you haven't probably been in a skilled nursing home for any long distance or time. The bike aspect of it, which we talked about a little bit, and then also the magic that comes into that later on. So tell us about the research for you doing the skilled nursing facilities.
When I think about it, all 3 of those things have to do with my partner, Brian Ballard.
Okay.
He is a professional magician who has also worked in the insurance industry, and for gosh, I don't know, a dozen years or so, he was a salesman for a senior HMO, and his job was to go into these facilities and do the bingo game.
Oh, and he was a bingo, okay.
He was the caller.
Oh my gosh.
So I heard the stories.
What a brave man. I'd like to meet him someday.
I thought about what I wanted Roy, the love interest, to be, and an aging magician in a dynasty, a family of magicians,
Okay.
seemed like a good thing because I had my resource right there.
Right.
I was writing this during the pandemic start, when the initial shutdown started.
Okay.
The group was working on Rancho Allegro, on the Better Late romance stories, and I had gotten so busy with my marketing writing, my clients in the real world,
Yes.
that I had kind of backed out of it. And they called me and they said, "Please, can you now that it's all shut down, can you write a novel and join us again?" So I did. I wrote this one.
And you explained the bicycle shop. You had a bicycle shop.
I had a bicycle
my
shop, and
So this couple came into your store one day, right?
I had a lot of couples. You know, another thing that impressed me about cycling and age was, especially with the electric bikes,
Yes.
is that we took a group of 20 riders to the Great Allegheny Passage, the Gap Ride, 350 miles, and we did it in 10 days.
Wow.
And the average age was about 70. One of the riders was a woman who turned 75. We had a birthday party one evening for
Oh
her.
my goodness.
And she's still riding 5 years later.
Wow. Wow.
So they joined us as couples. Some people came to our store to ride along with us. We had a lot of group rides, looking for love, but everybody was looking for adventure. And that's the other part of the piece of the puzzle.
So I want to know, what type of a writer? Did you plot everything out to the nth degree, or did you just sit down and just say, here's the story and it's going to come from my magic computer?
So in all of the studying I've done on creative writing, most of the people who were teaching taught about mythic structure. There is something innate in storytelling and mythic structure and all the helper characters, the villains, the rising and falling action that just speaks to the human spirit.
Right.
And so I do tend most often to find something that I want to write about, a topic. And I will look to the mythic structure and form it, and then I will create design characters and orchestrate them to enact facets of that argument, of what it is, what's the conflict. There on my website, we're going to talk about later, there's a short story about conflict, and I have a blog post I just wrote about it, and conflict is the essence of all this mythic structure. If you have no conflict, you don't have much of a story, usually.
So answering the question, you plotted somewhat?
Yeah, I actually did with this. And
Because it was an assignment that had aspects that other people were going to...
well, because, yeah, I knew that I was writing in a genre that was shared with 5 other writers initially, and I had to make it fit into their world that we as a group had created earlier.
Right.
And I had certain things that I had to follow with it. These, they decided to make them all sweet romances. I don't always write sweet stories.
Did they have a word count that you were all looking for?
No, it wasn't as formulaic as romance can tend to be. Genre fiction sometimes can be very formulaic, and that's why I've shied away from it in the past. They did want us to have, a romance that would bloom and speak to people, and to have that, you had to have certain activities take place in the story.
Yes.
But no,
Including a bicycle ride?
Including a bicycle ride, including a moment in the end of a second act that looked like the end of everything, a black moment.
Okay.
And how they come around from that, what happens.
Gotcha. Wow.
So, I try to make it a real page turner, even though it's not a thriller or mystery.
Right.
A love story. Every story these days, you've always had to write something that kept people turning to the next page.
Yeah, you sure do.
But even more so now with media grabbing everyone's attention, we need to have stories that really intrigue and make you want to find out, oh, that was bad, what's going to happen?
And your chapters are 2 pages long now, right?
They are shorter than they used to be.
They're
This
shorter
is
than
true.
they used to be, yes. Not
And
being
we break them up
facetious.
with sequences, yeah.
Well, one of the other reasons I wanted to have you on is because I think you have one of the most dramatic websites in the whole wide world for authors. Now, we've seen a lot of authors' websites, and most of them, there's a picture of the authors, there's a picture of 3 or 4 covers, and then there's underneath it, there's a little description, and then where to buy, right? Yours is a little different, and we're looking at it now. Give us a little explanation about this opening. I love it. Wait for the horse
you.
now. Wait. There it is. Tell us about that.
So this is Bethscape, and it can be found at bethscape.com.
Okay.
And, I conceived of the idea before the pandemic, but I worked on finalizing all this while I was working on the book and during the ensuing, shutdown and all that.
It's wonderful.
And the idea originally was, if I'm a reader and I want to, that old conundrum. So what 3 books would you take with you if you're on a desert isle?
Right.
I wanted to own the desert isle.
Yes, you did.
And present the
apparently.
book.
Where should we go next? And I love the
So,
waves coming in, the horse, and everything. And
Well, let's take a look at the page for this one. So if you go to books and pull down to Where You Go, I Go, you'll see. Now,
yes. Oh my goodness.
so what's
I'm
funny
getting
about-
dizzy.
this was the original page for the book, and it still is there. But then I got this email one day from Charlie and said, I got dizzy trying to read it. So I parked the bike for you, Charlie.
You certainly
So if you
did.
click on that, you'll go to the parked page. You can read the same thing.
That
And-
was clever too. My goodness.
So this is available as an ebook on Amazon and also as a paperback.
Right.
But what I want to say about this in general is, this is not your typical writer's website.
Right. It's not.
However, there is a tradition, a strong tradition of writers who are also artists.
Oh yes.
And it goes back to, for me, at UCI, we studied
Right.
William Blake.
Yeah.
English poet, painter, and what was it I had in my notes here, and printmaker. We
my
looked at his prints to try to see how they blended with what he wrote.
Right.
And as I said, in this day and age when we are, not just competing against other authors, we're
Right.
competing against so much media.
Yeah.
I think that an author should display a little bit of the
Creativity that's in his writings. Yeah.
Exactly.
I know Billy Collins, his poems, some of them he's given to an organization that is making little films with them. And
Yes.
that's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Although it's a different medium, I wonder, I'd rather just read Billy than have somebody try to illustrate to me what he's trying to say. But anyhow, where do we go next on
Well,
this?
why don't we take a look at the free samples? Because if you go to free samples and pull down short stories,
Oh,
these
the
are seashells on the
butterfly.
beach.
Oh, more beach. Oh, that's
and you can pick up some
beautiful.
shells. And so don't click on it, but one of the stories is Help. And that's the one that talks about conflict. And do you pants it? So a writer trying to pants it a little bit might put their character through what that character goes through.
One of the things when I was going through it the first time is that all of your short stories look like books. So I guess
Well,
you
they
would
are.
explain, yeah, they are, but short stories are short stories, or there are books with lots of short stories in it?
Well, the one at the bottom is actually a collection of short stories,
Yeah.
and that's also available on Kindle. Those are some of the stories I wrote at UCI, some I wrote before, and a couple after. One of my favorites is a take on The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I created The Secret Wife of Walter
Oh,
Mitty,
my
so you see
goodness.
it from her point of view. And that's The Secret Wife of Walter Mitty right there. You can see a little bit of the story.
Yeah, you
that
can
one I just give a sample of. You're
Right.
welcome to click on it if you want. So with fondness, and thanks to James Thurber, of course.
Oh, okay. How about that?
So women's take on it. And we can, I think, yeah.
Go to Wit.
So for the, I just want to make the point, for the Better Late Romance collection, I did do a free short story by any other name, and it's free. They just give me your first name and an email address. I'll sign you up for my brand new newsletter. I've only issued one so far.
Okay.
They will not be inundated. I'm having a hard time finding time to write a monthly.
Wow.
So it's basically what is coming in this world. And it's a fun short story, and it does take place in the Rancho Allegro universe. So
Okay.
it's a lot of fun.
So let's go back to the Better Late Romance. This is a category now that we consider, there was always late romance, now there's later romance.
Well, I think they didn't actually categorize it at first. I
So-
think it was just, well, we've got these older characters. We'll write a story about them The movie studios ignored it.
Okay.
Even when a movie did well, they didn't hop on the bandwagon and make something out of it. But as all of us are aging,
Yes.
you know, they called it, eventually it earned the title of boomer fiction, which is fine, but
that's
that limits
50,
it.
yeah.
It
That's
limits it.
50
So,
to maybe 60, 65,
or
you'll feel
and
you're a
older.
boomer, right? But then now you'll be a late boomer.
well, and the thing is that other generations are coming up, and they're
Yes.
going to be interested. So there's second chance romance, which technically could take place at any age. You could be a 20-year-old who met someone in college.
True.
At age 30, you meet them again.
Okay.
But it says something else when it's second chance romance for seniors.
Right.
You know, I think it's very common in this society for people to say a senior, oh, they're turning 65 or 55, let's throw them a party over the hill.
Yeah.
And you know why they call it over the hill?
No.
Because they want us to go and hide behind that hill so they don't have to see people who need love and romance and all that goes with it
Right.
at any age.
Yeah.
And so I like to take that apart and bring it back to this side of the hill and tell the stories. And so if you scroll down, you're going to see. So each one gives a free chapter to
Yes.
look at,
Right.
the initial chapter. And then you can choose whether or not to buy the book. The books are very affordable, too.
Okay.
Michael Payne, he's a well-established author. And,
Which one is that?
That's Little Star.
Oh, I want to see that. So you just blow up
click
the
on
first
that and-
page of it?
Yeah, so what we have is the first chapter of it.
Uh-huh.
And I think in my ebook version of this one, I include that first chapter as well.
Okay.
We didn't put it in the print versions of the books. It was just too many pages.
Yep.
But it's here also. You can just click on it.
And
take a
where's
look.
the here to buy? Is that every one of
Well,
those?
yeah, if you go back to that homepage,
Yeah.
which is, I think, a different link. There we go.
Yeah.
You'll see a little button below each book
Wow.
that says buy now.
Wow. That is terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
There
for
it is.
everything. We're going to preview. New segment I want to have on the show is a new books, or maybe it's not even a new book, maybe a couple years old. It caught my eye, and I thought we would just read a little synopsis of two books that you might want to get a hold of someday out there. So,
You want me to start?
yeah, why don't you
All
do
right.
it?
Well, I'm being introduced to Kathleen Rooney, the author, and her storytelling skills, from what I'm reading here, I've got to grab this book.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. The book is titled Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk. It's the last day of 1984, and 85-year-old Lillian Boxfish is about to take a walk. As she traverses Manhattan, she encounters bartenders, bodega clerks, chauffeurs, security guards, bohemians, criminals, children, parents, and parents-to-be in surprising moments of generosity and grace. While she strolls, Lillian recalls a long and eventful life that included a brief reign as the highest-paid advertising woman in America. Oh my gosh, I gotta meet her. A career cut short by marriage, motherhood, divorce, and a breakdown.
Wow.
A love letter to city life, however shiny or sleazy. Lillian Boxfish Takes a Walk by Kathleen Rooney paints a portrait of a remarkable woman across the canvas of a changing America. From the Jazz Age to the onset of the AIDS epidemic, the Great Depression, to the birth of hip-hop.
Wow.
Book to find.
Wow. You know, I want to mention an author that Barbara Walter. Matter of fact, I saw her on CNN. She was on Anderson Cooper's show. And she wrote a book, How Civil Wars Start. And I think she's a San Diego native or nearby. And I'd like to get her on someday. And it's how Civil Wars start. And she's not talking about ancient times or, you know, during the Civil War period. She's talking about today. And I think it's an interesting topic, and I would love to talk to her. So I have a closing quote. Start by doing what's necessary, then what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. Francis Assisi. So I have to thank you so much for joining me. It was a lot of fun just talking about your book, talking about the new categories and genres, and talking about your websites. And I'm so happy that you joined me today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
It's a lot of
thank you,
fun.
thank you, thank you, thank you. So that's all for now. I hope to see you same time, same place, and come back and talk to us. And we'll have one more show, I guess. Well, the next time you see me, it'll be a new show. So there, that's that. Thank you very much for watching. It's Charlie Redner saying goodbye.